Let's just jump right in. Have you ever felt that silent anxiety of being a highly capable professional who just isn't executing? That's exactly what we're unpacking in this explainer. We're talking about smart, driven people who are absolutely exhausted by drifting. You know, people who desperately crave the self-respect that only comes from consistent execution. They're caught in what we call the capability trap. It's this incredibly frustrating place where you end up relying on fleeting motivation rather than the unglamorous everyday mechanics of actually getting the work done.
And there's a quote from the source material that just hits the nail on the head. They aren't lazy, they're tired of starting and stopping. Honestly, that completely validates the unspoken frustration so many of us feel, right? It captures the reality of incredibly smart people who are drowning in passive consumption. Think about it, buying yet another productivity planner, registering a whole graveyard of unused website domains, reading endless self-help books, or just binging content without actually producing any output of your own. It's definitely not a lack of drive. It's a total, complete failure of the system being used to get things done.
Relying on inspiration? Well, it's a toxic loop. Here's exactly how it predictably plays out. Week 1, you start with incredible excitement. Week 2, you're putting in real effort. But then, by week 3, that inevitable fatigue sets in. Week 4 brings a so-called temporary pause, which, let's be real, always leads to that heavy, agonizing week 5 guilt. And finally, you restart the whole thing in week 6. It just shows how emotional excitement predictably fades and morphs into this exhausting cycle of stopping, beating yourself up, and starting all over again.
So, the crucial takeaway here is contrasting that failing paradigm of emotional motivation against the architectural reality of structured execution. Think of it like this. On one side, you have the spectator. They are constantly waiting for the right mood, the right spark, or that perfect magical moment of motivation to finally act. But on the other side, we have the builder. Builders, they don't wait for a feeling. They rely entirely on structure and mechanical discipline. And this isn't just a habit change. It is a fundamental shift in your professional identity.
Let's break down the exact anatomy of this execution failure. If it's not laziness, and we know it's not, what is actually stopping us? Well, the sources point to 3 distinct professional tensions that completely dismantle our best intentions: clarity paralysis, discipline failure, and isolation. We're going to look at each of these barriers right now so we can understand exactly what we're fighting against. First up is clarity paralysis. This is an unseen hurdle where the sheer massive size of an ambition creates anxiety instead of a clear next step. You tell yourself, I want to change my industry, or I'm going to build a massive business. But because that goal is so incredibly big and abstract, you have absolutely no idea what your physical action should be today. You get overwhelmed by all the options, which results in immediate inaction in this deep, paralyzing confusion about what to actually do next.
Next is discipline failure. Now, this recognizes a harsh biological reality. After a long day at your full-time job or, dealing with family responsibilities, your willpower is just fundamentally depleted. You start out strong in the morning, sure, but before you ever get to your personal projects, your energy is completely gone. And when the energy is gone, the brain naturally defaults to the absolute easiest comfort available. Usually that looks like doom scrolling on the couch for 2 hours or just staying busy with meaningless, low-effort tasks.
Finally, isolation. This acts as a quiet killer, attempting to build entirely alone, especially in an environment that actively rewards mediocrity, comfort, and passive entertainment. It almost always results in a silent quit. Because think about it, if you get stuck and you have literally no one to ask, or if your immediate environment doesn't demand any consistency from you, just fading away quietly becomes the absolute path of least resistance. No one notices and no one cares.
And that brings us to the core thesis of this entire explainer. Ordinary people don't lack capacity. They lack structure. We literally have to completely dismantle the myth of motivation. If you want to stop drifting, you must replace your reliance on inspiration entirely with the rigorous mechanics of a structured build plan. It's not about being exceptional, and it's certainly not about being naturally gifted. It's simply about being organized and systemized. The foundational anchor to this new structure is one specific number: 90. A 90-day execution sprint is identified in the source material as the exact timeframe needed to successfully transition from a spectator to a builder. Now, why 90? Well, a 5-year plan is entirely too abstract, and a 1-week plan is just too short to really matter. But 90 days? That's long enough to produce measurable proof of your work, but short enough to keep the finish line visible and the daily urgency incredibly high. So let's see how this builds out into a realistic framework, what the sources call the Builder Plan Lite. You take that massive ambition we talked about earlier and break it down into highly manageable daily architectural blocks. It's just 4 steps. Step 1. Write a simple one-line mission statement. Step 2. Set just one measurable goal for those 90 days. Step 3. Define 3 non-negotiable weekly actions. And Step 4. Establish a prove metric. That's the whole shebang. You don't need a massive, complex life plan. You literally just need these 4 actionable steps.
But wait, how do you actually cure that clarity paralysis we talked about earlier? Well, you must establish what the text calls speed to first win. You do this by defining your very first physical, non-negotiable action, and here's the kicker, it must be due within exactly 72 hours. Not next week, not next month, 72 hours. Closing that gap between planning and your first physical action changes absolutely everything. It forces immediate clarity and practically guarantees that you actually start building momentum.
The true intent behind this entire structure is profoundly practical. We are replacing overwhelming theory with real-world strategies that guarantee measurable progress for ordinary professionals. It's really about looking at your actual, constrained life, with all of its fatigue, obligations, and limits, and designing a build plan that survives those real-life constraints. We are actively transforming your reality through targeted action rather than just relying on grand imagination.
However, a plan without an engine will eventually fail, which is exactly why we must introduce the final mechanical solution, socially costly, inescapable accountability. Let's just be honest with ourselves for a second. You are going to face moments where your energy completely drops and you want to quit. It's inevitable. To survive those low moments, you absolutely need an accountability engine that makes walking away incredibly uncomfortable and socially expensive.
Let's look at why most typical accountability strategies fail. Choosing your friends for accountability, that almost always falls flat. Frankly, they love you way too much to challenge you. They're easy on you, they accept your excuses, and they just let you off the hook. On the flip side, assigned circles, putting yourself in a group of serious, objective peers, makes walking away socially costly. These assigned groups demand proof. They make it practically impossible to silently quit without someone noticing and calling you out on it.
And to combat that dangerous week 5 dip we mentioned, that terrible moment in the cycle where you feel like absolutely nothing is happening and you're just spinning your wheels, you deploy a visible progress dashboard. The rule here is brilliantly simple: 1 sentence and 1 piece of evidence per week. By documenting just a screenshot, a photo, or a link every single week, you completely eliminate the excuse of being too busy to track. You actually prove your own momentum to yourself. So when you inevitably want to quit, you look at this dashboard and realize exactly how much you've already built.
Now, to make all of this work, you have to violently shift your energy and reallocate your daily focus. Right now, a lot of capable professionals are stuck in a cycle of high input and low output. That means endless podcast and article consumption with absolutely zero execution. We want to flip that entirely on its head. You need to restrict your energy to just 10% passive consumption, dedicate a massive 70% directly into active, structured execution, and spend the remaining 20% tracking your measurable proof. This isn't just basic time management, this is the literal math of an identity shift.
Let me leave you with this final provocative thought. You have a very real choice to make today. Will you continue the exhausting cycle of waiting for inspiration, getting hyped up, and then inevitably starting and stopping? Or will you finally commit to the unglamorous, highly reliable mechanics of building? Remember, structure is what actually turns ordinary people into capable builders. The entire plan is laid out right in front of you. The only question left is, are you ready to execute?